All right, let's talk about the Alabama A&M game. 52-7. If anybody tuned in last week's show, I said 52-10 was my projection, so we're close. Defense did a little bit better than I thought I did, or thought they would. So 52-7, great football game. We'll start with talking about Alabama A&M. Just keep it brief. There's not a lot of positive to talk about for them. Cornelius Brown, their quarterback, he played a fine game for a FBS opponent, specifically a Power Four conference team. But I'm going to keep it brief on Alabama A&M and talk mainly about the Hogs here. Alabama A&M scored 7 points opening drive and then never scored again. Started playing their backups and a lot of their depth players towards the third, fourth quarter. They weren't able to hold up. I don't think anybody expected them to. That first drive was nice for them, but outside of that, they didn't really have much to show for. We'll talk about the Hogs. Quarterback position, Taylor Green, 6 touchdown performance, 322 passing yards. Man had a phenomenal game, 41 yards on the ground as well. So over 350 plus yards of total offense. I talked about two players going into this week's game on who I was expecting to have a big game against Alabama A&M, and that was Taylor Green and that was C.J. Brown. And both of those guys really performed. Taylor Green was not necessarily a hot pick or it was a hot pick. Everybody, nobody saw like that. That was coming. Like nobody was going to think that that wasn't an obvious selection. So Taylor Green did have a 300 plus yard passing game and 6 touchdowns. But CJ Brown, I mean, he had two of the touchdowns. So every receiver, I mean, he had five different players catch touchdown passes from him alone, and CJ Brown was the only one to have multiple touchdown passes caught. So those two guys, like I thought, were going to have big games. And to nobody's surprise, Taylor Green was one of them. But 52 points on the board, the majority of them scored under Taylor Green's passing attack. And so, like I said, 6 touchdowns on his end, a really big game for him. Very excited to see what he had done. Other than a few missed passes, the man did play very well. So give credit to where credit is due. The running game, 200 plus yards of offense on the running game. It didn't feel like that watching the game. There was no one guy either. Washington had 79 yards. We'll talk a little bit more about him too as we preview the next game. But there was really nobody that like just stood out in the run game. Everybody just played solidly. Braylon Russell was the leading carry guy, 11 carries, 41 yards. Nothing impressive there. But we really took it to the air. And that's what I kind of expected from Pittman and Petrino this week. I talked about it in last week's episode. I thought we were going to really focus on the passing offense just because of how new that those players are in the receiving side of the game. And I thought Alabama A&M's defense catered towards us passing, but we had so many new receivers. We got to see a lot of them. Omega Blake, 7 catches, 121 yards. Big game for him. CJ Brown, like I said, 2 touchdown receptions. Jalen Brown, Raylan Sharp, all caught touchdown passes. So I think that was really the emphasis going into the game. And I know Pittman talked a little bit about it in the press conference post game, but the goal was to get a lot of those guys involved. And I think that he was able to see who really shined. And I honestly don't think there was somebody that had like a bad game. I think the starters played well. Like I said, Blake and the two Browns, CJ Brown, Jalen Brown, were the technically the three starters for the game. They were the three leading receivers. They all three had touchdowns. Raylan Sharp, one of the guys from Fresno State, had a good game. Cam Shanks wasn't overly involved in the receiving game, but he played fine. Monte Harrison had a couple big catches. So I thought the receiving game was very impressive. We got to see a lot of guys stand out, and it was really the guys who started. So we talked about it. A lot of these starters getting that opportunity to start, no matter what game it is, even if it's Alabama A&M, you have the first chance to run with it, and they all did. And I think Blake's going to be one of our better receivers, but CJ Brown was another guy, and I talked about it in last week's episode. Really believing in what he could do going into this game, so I was very excited to see how well he did. So just each week as we recap a game, I'm going to kind of give just a grade for how well I thought we performed. This game, an FCS opponent, it really doesn't matter that much. But I'm going to give the offense a grade of an A minus. I thought if an A is as good as you can do, or technically an A plus, I thought they were just a tick below that. I thought Taylor Green missed a couple open throws that he really needed to hit. I thought his management in the pocket was overall pretty well. He had a few spots where I thought he could have maneuvered a little bit differently, but overall handled pressure fairly well. And then the running game was just, I mean, 200 yards can't hate on that, but it didn't feel like 200 yards. It was a running game that I think they just kind of got it done. And the passing game really took over, which I was honestly excited to see about. I think that that's kind of what we wanted. So I can't really give them anything lower than A. I'm going to give them an A minus for the offense. But we can switch over to the defense and talk a little bit about them. And in mentioning Alabama A&M briefly, I talked about how they scored a touchdown on their first drive. This was probably the only drive that where they really underperformed. And early in the game, and we score first, so it's 7-0, but they score quickly after and tie the ball game. It was and Pittman talked about this after, and so did Sori and Ball in their press conference. Like, they obviously were very disappointed how they played in that first drive. A lot of missed assignments, as Pittman said, and the player said, but not a great job on that first drive. And watching that live, I was just like, this is not what we want to see from the defense opening drive, especially against an FCS opponent. So I think a lot of Arkansas fans were worried after that first drive, but they really shaped up after that. I mean, those 7 points were the only 7 points we gave up. We got to see a ton on the defensive side. So the offense, they played a lot of players, and KJ Jackson got to play, and several running backs got to play, and probably 10 plus receivers played. And we ran multiple offensive line fronts. But on the defensive side, I mean, we went probably 3 sets of 11 at least on the defensive side. So on the line, we'll start with them. I thought there was some impressive play. They struggled a little bit early on. I talked about Cam Ball as one of the guys to watch for this game. I thought he played well. He didn't really stuff the stat sheet at all. I mean, no tackles for loss, no sacks, but I think he did have a fairly good game. But I was excited to see a lot of the guys on the ends, and I'll talk about a couple specifically who I thought had a good game. Quincy Rhodes Jr. He had a sack in this game that was big. Philip Lee had a tackle for loss. That's big. Um, Several different guys got in on some tackles. I think Reginald Vaughn, who's one of the 4-star recruits we had a tackle for loss. He was probably on the third set of players that came in. But on the defensive line, I like to Philip Lee. I think Philip Lee is going to be good. Justice Boone, I think, was good against the run. Quincy Rhodes Jr. It was nice to see him get a sack. Just watching him on the field live, man, he's somebody that he's not as talented by any means as Landon Jackson, but he just looks like him physically. I mean, he's a huge player, 6'6", 275. So if we can just get some of that production that Landon gave us last year, I think he'll be really helpful for this defense. And then behind Ball, that rotation, I think it's going to be really pivotal. Blackstock went in there. Danny Saley from BYU 2 years ago. Kevin Otis, several different guys came in there. Having depth at that interior defensive line is going to be really critical until David Oke comes back. So I thought the defensive line unit played well. They got better throughout the game, like many of these units did. The linebacker room, not much to talk about. Sori, Dix, they both played fine. I thought they were good. And then on the defensive back room, this is where I was really paying attention the most. And I thought they struggled on that first drive. They kind of just played very much protect defense. Nothing. They were being very reactive and not proactive. They were just letting passes just be caught and with really no defensive pressure on the back end. So that was a little frustrating to start the game, but I thought they really settled in there. I thought Walker and Neal kind of struggled early, but they really started to play well. A couple guys that I thought were really big in the starting unit. I thought Larry Worth played well, great tackler. Jordan Young was another guy, the transfer in from Cincinnati. And some of the second and third units, a guy Shakur Smalls, who was not even, I believe, a Division One transfer, who had a great game in the nickel primarily. Caleb Wooden. If you watch the last episode, I talked about Kenai Walker, the corner from Oklahoma, playing on the outside. And I thought him getting the start over Jaheim Singletary was a big deal. It really said a lot. I thought he was going to have a big game, and I think Walker played fine. Nothing, I think, of note, which can be both good and bad. But Caleb Wooden, I think, was the guy I really should put on that list. That power forward transfer from Auburn, played safety primarily. I think he can play the nickel as well. He can kind of play all over, and they used him like that a little bit. But he had a phenomenal game. I thought he played really well. I think he had a pass deflection. Just watching him, not a stat sheet stuffer either, but just had a half tackle for loss as well. Looking at it, so but he had a big game. A couple other guys as well played well. Kayshawn Devila, the JUCO college Devila. And then there was a couple other guys as well. I believe Miguel Mitchell in the starting unit also had a good game. But defensive back unit, just like the other two units that I mentioned, I think they just got better throughout the game. So if I'm giving it a grade, it's worse than the offense. I think that I told you I thought they would score 10. So if 10 was the goal, or 10 wasn't the goal, 0 is the goal. But if 10 was what I kind of thought they were going to do, I'll give that a C. If you give up 10, I think that's a C. So I think they did a little bit better. I'm going to give the defensive grade a B minus. They played better throughout the game, which is expected as Alabama A&M relieved some of their starters. But I really did think the unit, even against their starters, started to get better throughout the game. And that's all you can really ask for. That first drive, both for Taylor on the offensive side and on our defensive side. They had nerves. They struggled. They missed plays that they know they should have made. It's football. Like I think Sori said it, it doesn't matter who you're playing. It's week one of football. Like it doesn't matter if it's Alabama A&M. It doesn't matter if it's Texas A&M. You're gonna be nervous. And so that first drive we got out of the way. We got 7 points on the offensive side, and we gave up 7 points on the defensive side, and that's frustrating. But to watch them really bounce back and not give up any points, I think that's got to deserve a B minus. You could honestly make an argument that it should be even higher than this, but I think because they were so frustrated with giving up 7 points, and I think as a fan early in that game, them giving up 7 points was frustrating. Usually you want those 7 points if they're going to score it all in the end of the game when you know we just don't care as much. But to have it on the opening drive, it was tough. But I think they bounced back, and that's why they get a B minus. So that's the thoughts on the Arkansas Alabama A&M game. I'm happy it's behind us. We're 1-0.